Hey guys, I'm really pleased to be bringing you today an episode on the music of the X-Files, focusing on the music from the show and not just the kind of iconic main theme, but actually looking at all the score that runs in the show, sort of in the background, so the underscore that's not generally looked at and talked about so much. I've chosen to do this today because it's one of my favourite shows of all time. I always had a lot of admiration for the show's composer, Mark Snow, who's created some great music for lots of other shows as well. Do go check him out. But I think what he created for the X-Files is pretty unbelievable, really. Again, not just the main title theme, but we will have a little bit of a look at that, because the rest of the show, to some extent, does draw on it in the underscore as well. And I'm going to look closely at the music of some of the episodes from seasons 1 and 2. I'm not going any further than that today. I may choose to do so in a later episode, but I think there's already plenty to talk about, and some of the most iconic stuff can easily be found in seasons 1 and 2. We'll start with a little look at the main title theme and some of the instrumentation he uses that's really iconic as well. So he was well known for creating a lot of the music through synthesizers and sampled sounds. So he would sit at his piano in his studio and produce it all through those means. And similarly today, I'm sat here with my laptop, and I'm going to sort of dial in a few of the sounds I think make his signature. Unsurprisingly, the first one would be piano. So right there, that main theme is obviously centered around a piano figure. A lot of what's in the background of the show is rolling piano stuff as well. Okay, so we've got piano. We have got harp. Okay, again, does a lot of similar things that a piano can do, and we sort of we can hear how one could kind of easily translate to the other, but it's got that softer, more reflective sound that he likes to use in the more poignant moments in the series. Strings, pretty much a staple of any cinematic scoring, and again, he uses it to good effect to create this sort of backdrops. It's quite tense and harsh sometimes. Quite open, lots of long, sustained notes, sometimes more tense and kind of clustery. Notes are closer together, so a bit more dissonant. And then also, although I'm not going to kind of pick apart loads of different ones, synthesizers. There's a couple I will look at today, but he uses synth to create those otherworldly sounds. And again, just some really nice sounds, actually, that kind of float along in the background, create a bit of unusual atmosphere. So what we'll do, we'll have a little look at the main theme first before going into any of the episodes. So what you've essentially got there, you've got a minor broken chord. Unsurprisingly, a lot of the show's music is in a minor key because it's dark, it's mysterious, like the subject matter, and the main theme is very simple. So there's 4 notes. You kind of got this repeater effect going on. Sounds good in both octaves. It wouldn't sound that interesting if it was just the broken A minor chord. But it's adding the 6th note of the A minor scale above that. Or you can think of it as just another note up from the top note. So A, C, E, F. And it's that little sort of clash, I suppose, when you hear the two together, that makes that kind of interesting. And a bit like, where's it going to go next? Because it hangs on that note, it's unresolved. And so to move on to our first proper episode that we'll focus in some detail, we're going to look at episode 2 from season 1, which is Deep Throat. So Deep Throat introduces the character Deep Throat. And there's some mysterious goings on. Mulder's drawn to go and investigate some unusual things that people are seeing in the sky, people losing their memory, having kind of blackout moments. But the character Deep Throat comes to warn Mulder to stay away, and as usual for pretty good reason. But there's lots of kind of slight military stuff going on in this episode as well. There's an undercurrent of synthesizers, which is why I like this episode. And I think early on, other than that main theme, it's something notable that Mark Snow does is using those synths in the background. So we'll take a look at the transcription that I've produced for each episode that we study in detail, and you're going to hear a playthrough. Some of the sound on there isn't perfect, but you'll at least see the notation as it goes through as well, giving you an idea of how things come together. And if you want to try playing any of it yourself, then obviously you can do. And once we've had a look at those, I'll kind of break down some of the key elements. Okay, so you saw there then that synth part. And that kind of rolls through, so it's like a D minor, C major, G major. You could think of it in that way. And because you've got that G major, it kind of gives it a softer end to that little chord sequence. So to get a little bit technical, we could think of it as being Dorian mode, so D minor but with a B natural. Going up the scale there. The synth parts tend to overlap with strings as well, so you kind of get then these held notes, so that these sort of held and we call them pedal notes when it's just a note that kind of continues when other things are changing around it, because those two notes, the D and the E right next to each other, fits. So it suggests there's a bit of a clash, but it's kind of just, again, serene in the background. Then things get a bit more interesting with the arrival of the harp part. There's that harp that I talked about that's in this case used as the main melody. It's all based on the D minor scale, but it's actually really, really, really simple what's going on. And I think it is about the sound quality in this one that kind of makes the biggest difference. Where it goes up another notch is with the piano figure that comes towards the end of the transcription I did. That kind of thing there. So it always sounds really nice on piano, these broken chords, but what's really happening is just an alternating start of a minor scale, with a note underneath it, which is an A, so like the 5th degree of the minor scale. And it sounds interesting because it's quicker, it's in semiquavers. All right, and that's a really common trope in lots of dramatic, I suppose, TV thriller, particularly American, I would say as well. You hear it all over the place, to be honest with you, and it's nearly always minor key, and it's meant to just create a bit of a sense of, the pace has picked up, something's going to happen, and it creates some drama. But it works really well here, and it's not kind of too overused, but it blends in nicely. So all in all, I feel Deep Throat doesn't sort of push the envelope in terms of the music, but I think Mark Snow sets a great backdrop here and some figures that reoccur themselves through season 1. So moving on then to the next episode we're going to look at tombs. And this cue, I think, is called Toilet Tombs, which is, that's something which those of you that have seen the episode will know quite well. But Tombs is one of the first Monster of the Week stories. It does come back into, it's a two-parter, so you've got Squeeze and then you've got Tombs, the follow-up episode later in season 1. And, it's a really terrifying, horrible monster, to be fair. It feeds on people's, he feeds on people's livers in order to prolong his own life. A monster that, has lived for many, many hundreds of years already, and he resurfaces to kind of go through a cycle of feeding again before hibernating. So, in Tombs, we have lots of really jarring, really dissonant music, unsurprisingly, because it's pretty horrible stuff. And the thing I think that is used a lot here, and I focus on it in my transcription, is the strings, and used very differently here, used to create some real dissonance, some clash, as what I would call a marauding strings part, because it just kind of keeps moving angularly all around and really keeps us unsettled. So let's have a look at the video transcription. Okay, so let's take a look at some of those particularly clashing string figures going on there. Right from the outset, it's wandering around fairly atonally, so as in there's just no clear key. It's all very angular, and it kind of goes occasionally by step, and then by leap. And we don't know what's going to happen because there's no real pattern to follow, which is kind of what makes atonal music what it is and why it's unsettling, because it's just entirely unresolved. He really likes to go from using intervals of things like sevenths, so because they themselves clash. All right, so it's unsettling when we have pairs of notes like that together. And I like the word marauding because it suggests a kind of that something's creeping around, something's not right. It's never again, it's never resolving, it's never kind of finding a nice neutral place, which is very much the main character of that episode in a nutshell. So I'm going to pick out the end bit here just slightly more. I like the way it ends up in this repeating figure. You've got so F, G, G flat, quite chromatic. C sharp on top, and then a low E, which against that F, again, that's a sort of second, that creates another real clash. So it's just layering these dissonant notes together in different octaves to create a sort of expansive but clashing feel, which works really well in tunes. And just before we move on, it would be remiss not to give mention to one other really notable moment of the score in Tombs, which is the microtonal string plucking, as you hear in some of the really super creepy moments. And this is just to build up all sorts of tension. And it's based on a kind of 20th century composer technique by the likes of Penderecki and his piece Polymorphia, with the string orchestra plucking away, finding notes, finding microtones in between notes, with the idea of just creating this big wall of dissonance. Okay, so next up we've got Roland, and a piece of music that I've often seen called Lamenta, which is used, again, it's in a few episodes in the series, but Roland's one where it fits so poignantly because of the really sympathetic main character of Roland, who's a janitor or a caretaker at a science research facility. And the episode revolves around how there's these really grisly murders, and it turns out that Roland is the one doing the killing, but he's being kind of possessed by the spirit of his dead brother, who was a research scientist. The music is absolutely gorgeous for this particular episode, and it's all about the piano here, really. The other things, there's some strings going on in the background, but let's watch my video transcript to hear some of that and see it in action. Okay, so there's a few things here which I'd like to pick out. Now, straight away, it's all based around minor scale again, this time D minor to start with. There's a bit of chromaticism going on there, kind of in the left-hand part. The right hand's more of the sort of bit more of that sort of stuff again, just the first few notes of the minor scale. But then it kind of shifts. Now that's going to B flat minor, so entirely unrelated to D minor where we started. It's what we could call a tertiary move or tertiary modulation because it's a third away, being D to B flat. Which in itself is actually quite common in sort of fantasy and horror film score because it leaves a certain uncertainty. But the other clever thing here is that in the lower part, there's a bit of evidence of that, the leitmotif from the main theme with the minor chord and the sixth. Listen to it underneath. Can you hear it kind of fitting there underneath? Yeah, it's just beautiful. And it's all to do with broken chord figures, and it moves further down as well to F minor. And there's this whole kind of this shift all the way through between D minor, B flat minor. The F minor is more related to B flat minor. And there are some strings in there which kind of set a bit of a background and add a little bit more tension. And at the end, you get this sort of more sweeping figures that kind of encompass more of the piano. Let's have a quick look. And then you've got this low kind of D pedal note. That kind of grates against the B flat in particular, the B flat minor in particular. And then there's a big kind of figure going up at the end there, which is like a minor chord with an added ninth or second that goes up to the third. Some open bare fifths, which sound great and a nice harp octave on the piano as well. So it's all kind of really, it's really, really atmospheric. It's kind of chilling as well in those. Okay, so on to my final one for today. We're going to look to season 2 now, to the episode 3, which is not many people's favourite episode. I think the episode is not all that great either. It's interesting because Scully's gone missing. She's been abducted, so it's Mulder on his own and kind of gone rogue. It's much more about the kind of the emotional narrative, I think, with this episode and how he's feeling and the fact he's really on edge. But the music, I mean, I think is above and beyond the quality of the rest of the episode. So that's why I had to pick this out. And there's some really key things again that come up in other episodes too with this one. So the harp is really important here. If we've not looked at it loads yet, I think it's one of the really key things. The way he uses strings here and the way he builds up more extended chords is really effective. And let's, so it kind of goes, the music I'm looking at, there's a cue called Bloody Jacuzzi and another one later on, Blood in the Loaf. So let's have a look at the video transcription to hear some of that in action. Okay, so right from the outset there, the strings, really dark and brooding. You've got this F minor now. Don't know why, it's just a great key for it. Maybe because it's got the flats in, and so it feels not the most used key as some of the other ones that he's turned to in his other cues. So really low, really dark. F minor chord there straight away. And that kind of morphs into having an added ninth, so a G. And then having added seventh, so an E flat as well. And then we get this kind of what then becomes like an inverted D flat chord, because you've got the F, A flat, and D flat with the F at the bottom there. So you could say it's more like a D flat chord, but with the F. So it's inverted, and sometimes with the C as well. So it still has that bit of dissonance. So yeah, F minor, add 9 with the 7, with the D flat above, or a D flat major inverted chord. So, already creating some pretty big moods out of all of that. The harp then that goes over top of that. So it's all from the F minor scale. Unsurprisingly, we're seeing a bit of a recurring thing here. Then going down to an E flat. Okay, just really reflective, sort of slow-moving melodies here that just meander in the background. Because I think with this episode is so melancholy, and a lot of the show is, the way the characters are feeling is so melancholy, and this is where the music just kind of grabs that and gives it exactly what it needs. So dark F minor chord. There's the harp bit. Okay, so then there's this sort of nice figure which kind of trumps along as well and creates a bit more momentum, taking from the leitmotif, the minor chord to adding minor 6. Then you've got this section, this passage, where it sort of descends chromatically. It's a really interesting. I don't see this in lots of other scores in the episodes, but it stands out to me here because it's got a really effective quality to it. Oh, that's right. So you've got kind of a. So all the while the strings are kind of going in chords behind that, and the harp is the bit that's sort of going in broken chords or arpeggios. And it's when you look at it on paper, it is very simple. For whatever reason, a minor 7th in that one, and then a normal minor arpeggio. And it works downwards and downwards, just going through chromatically broken minor chords. But because they're all unrelated, there's no clear key to it. It retains that air of mystery before descending down to that kind of F minor shape again when it reaches as far as there, and it presses on. Now, that first bit doesn't really use piano too much, but later on, piano is one of the most key things. So there's a cue called Blood in the Loaf later on, which is one of my favourite things, I think, musically, from the whole show. It's based around that yet again. Leitmotif. Original key. Here we're in minor key. And it just creates this really lilting figure because it repeats those notes and it pops on top of it an A flat, so the third, but just higher up in a higher octave. Sometimes on its own, sometimes with the notes below. And he kind of does this in fits and starts with some strings in the bed of it. And then he kind of puts underneath of that, bear in mind it's F minor, the strings or synth with a low E. Or maybe it moves from F to E. So of course it feels really unsettling, and it's just by shifting it a semitone lower, so it perfectly clashes with that top bit that on its own is beautiful, and then suddenly massively dark when we add the clashing notes underneath. So effective, and that comes through the episode in different places. But yeah, this one is a real favourite. Well, that's where we're going to leave things for today. But I hope you've enjoyed me pulling apart and looking in some detail at the music of Mark Snow and what he's done for the X-Files, which I think is incredible. And if you haven't actually seen it in context, then do go away from here and have a good look and listen, because it's incredible stuff. Do like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, because I will be bringing more musicology videos very soon, including perhaps some more TV theme or film theme stuff. So until then, thank you, take care, and I'll see you again very soon.